So this is quite typical when we come out into a vineyard and we're looking for root diseases. Often we'll come into a hollow or a slightly lower lying area where water might pool during the winter, and we'll find a patch of vines. Not necessarily every vine, but some vines in an area. We might have some replants, some vines that are younger and not doing well, and some older vines that are obviously struggling where they've got short shoots in spring and they're not giving the same amount of growth that we expect from the surrounding vines. We've tagged this vine here with a pink tag because it's a short shooted vine. Sometimes they'll grow out of that in one season, but the following season that same vine might again be short and then collapse. So today we're going to dig this vine up and have a look and see if we can find any root disease on it. So what I'm doing here, we're interested in the roots within about half a metre of the vine, so I'm just going to dig down, get the root ball around that area. There will be roots further out hopefully, but we're not so worried about those. If we've got a root disease, we're going to see it around the base of the trunk. One of the things that's quite characteristic is if we find some upper tier roots right below the soil surface, it often happens when the lower roots have died off. So what we can see here is as we've been digging, we've knocked the below ground part of the trunk and the bark's come away quite easily. It's quite soft and it looks as if there's fungal hyphae, that whiteness in amongst the bark growing up along the trunk, which is quite common with these root diseases, and I expect that when we get down further we'll find some rotted roots as well. So now we've excavated around the roots. You can see on this side that the roots are quite fragile and they've easily broken. They look like they could be rotted. If I put the spade underneath, there's no roots directly under the vine, and there's one good strong root going back the other way up the row. There are some second tier roots here where the vine's been trying to get some nutrients from further up. I'm simply going to cut through the healthy root, pull the plant up and examine the roots. So now I'm just going to cut away these canes so I can remove the vine from the trellis like that. And because this is an older vine, I'm going to get my saw. So I'm going to take my saw, cut the head and check that there's no trunk diseases in the main trunk before we look at the roots. As we can see here, the trunk is nice and clean. There's no big staining areas. There might be a little bit of black there that may be Phaeoacremonium or Phaeomonella, but that's not a concern. That looks a healthy trunk. If we take it again below the graft, we cut through. Here we can start to see some streaking and discolouring, suggesting there's something wrong with the root system, and we'll continue to investigate that. So what we're looking for here in these small roots is nice, healthy, white roots. If there's any blackening or purpling in these young roots, then we could suspect blackfoot rot. But these ones up here look good. So above that healthy root, the cambium under the bark is nice and green and healthy looking. As we proceed down, we come to this black necrotic region here on the trunk. And this is dead cambium, and if we look below that, we'll find dead wood as well. So this whole area here can no longer conduct nutrients and water from the roots up to the vine, and so that little root there was all that was feeding this vine. If we carve away here, we will find dead, rotting wood here that's non-functional. So we'll just cut through here. And we can see there's some purpling in the wood here. It's not overly strong in this case, but all of this is dead and so it's not going to be functioning. If we cut this up further, we'll see further signs of decay. So what we have here is some dead tissue, and the live tissue is starting to purple and discolour as well. And this is quite typical of blackfoot rot, though it could be some of the other root diseases as well. We'd have to take samples here, take them back to the lab to confirm exactly which root disease, but the important thing here is we have a root disease attacking the vine and stopping the vascular system from working. So we're looking for signs of root rots. We come out into the vineyard, we see a vine like this, and this is quite typical. The vine's gone through bud burst, the shoots have been a little short compared to the others, and then suddenly they've collapsed just before flowering, so you can see the inflorescences here. Now when we dig this vine up, we'd expect, if it's a root rot problem, to find dead roots and maybe one small root that was what was allowing the vine to grow this far, and it's collapsed under the pressure of trying to draw enough water in through that single root. So what we've got here is we've got some fine roots coming from quite near the soil surface, a second tier of roots, and then we have the two main roots that have been here since the vine was planted. They haven't penetrated any further than where they were originally. They've gone along the row, but there's no roots that have gone down. And the roots that are here look quite damaged and possibly rotten. So again, I'm going to cut the roots here on either side, take the vine out and have a look at it and see if we can see signs of root disease. And we'll just cut the canes so that we can look at the main trunk. As this is an older vine, to make sure there's no trunk disease, we're going to make a cut here and examine the trunk. And I can see that the use of pruning wound dressings has been used, so we don't expect to see a trunk disease here. So now that we've cut the wood, we can look, there's nice clean wood here. There's no V-shaped staining, no evidence of trunk diseases. In fact, the trunk looks quite healthy, though it's very dry to the feel, indicating that the root system is given out and that we're not getting water flowing through the xylem. Now we're going to look at the section of the vine below the graft, which gives us an indication of what's happening in the roots. So as we break it open here, in this case we can see some staining on the wood here. There's a necrotic region that suggests that there might be a fungus in the xylem somewhere in this lower part of the vine. And we'll keep cutting down and having a look till we find it. So as we peel back the bark below that region where we saw the tissue had died back and there was a V shape in the wood, we see there's a whole lot of necrotic tissue, this brown, black in the cambium, so that the bark is dead. And if we peel round to the side here, we can see some healthy cambium, some healthy bark where that fungus hasn't got to yet. But a lot of the bark all the way around here, there's quite a big dead region. And so that's stopping any of the nutrients and water from travelling up in the cambium here or in the xylem behind them. And that's what's going to kill the vine, or has killed the vine in this case. Some of these fine roots here are healthy. These will be what was keeping the vine alive. They're nice and clean. And so the little bit of nutrient coming in there was travelling up through little pathways where there was clean wood and getting to the vine until that wasn't sufficient and the vine died. So we just cut here, take the root. You can see most of the root here is dead. There's only a small white bit that's alive and the rest is all necrotic and dead and full of fungi. And so if we keep cutting the roots, so these purpley brown regions, these swirls through the roots, and only a very small amount of white healthy tissue that was conducting water to the plant. Try the other side. And again, a lot of dead necrotic tissue, a lot of this purpling, which is quite characteristic of when we have blackfoot rot in the vines. We can sometimes also get other rot fungi, root rot fungi in here, in which case this may not be as firm. This may actually break down and snap off when we try and dig it out, or when we touch it with the knife this might all break down depending on which root rot that we've got. But any time when you find a root system where you've got the staining, where there's a whole lot of dead tissue so that they can't conduct anymore, we know we've got a root rot, and it really comes down to how we're going to manage that. And sometimes we'll need to isolate from this to identify which one it is. Some root rots are more manageable than others, but these are the sort of general symptoms you expect to see with a root rot. Damaged roots, damaged base of the trunk, non-conductance up through the vine.